so that we include that. So we will start recording now. Our topic today is coping with constant change, and then if we can go on to the overview of what we'll be doing. As we mentioned, we're going to be checking in to see how we're doing with all the changes going on in the world. We're going to be talking about how this is uncharted territory. It's something that hasn't happened in our lifetimes and in many years. Also, we'll be going over some common reactions to change and uncertainty, so how people usually react and some strategies there. We will be talking about how to cope with those changes as well. And also we will be touching again on just a reminder for self-care, of course, in these trying times. So we'll go ahead and go on to the next slide. So as we talked about last week, we introduced you to the feelings wheel. So we just wanted to take a moment before we get started to check in on everybody. We know it's the end of the day, it's an evening, it's middle of the week. We wanted to see how everybody's feeling. If you want to glance at all the feelings on there and kind of get an idea, I'm sure you guys know how your week is going. If you want to consider it for a second and put in the chat box how you're feeling right now. I'll give you a minute for everybody to mull over what word they want to put to describe their feelings. You can use one word, several words, a sentence, whatever you'd like.
I see confused. I would definitely say these are confusing times. Absolutely confusing times. Anxious and tired, I definitely think go hand in hand often, right? Sometimes stress makes us tired and anxious, and we will be talking more about stress and anxiety next week on our Wellness Wednesdays workshop series. We'll be discussing taming stress and anxiety. Oh, can't see the chart anymore. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Hopeful, I love it. Anxious, yes, a lot of anxiety right now.
Yeah, especially as we're getting closer to school, I think that's a common feeling. Mm-hmm. Yeah, changes definitely make us feel insecure. That's a pretty natural reaction. Overwhelmed, yes. Guilty, yes. A lot of times when things are changing and we don't know exactly how to react, we can definitely feel guilt right away. And it's hard because so many of us, I think we tend to compare each other, right? We compare ourselves to other people, what we think we should be doing. And so that's an easy thing to fall into.
Peaceful and hopeful, wonderful. Yes, definitely discouraged and overwhelmed some days. And that's just want to mention that that's so natural right now to literally feel like you're on a roller coaster of emotions, right? One day you're peaceful, you're hopeful. One day you're like overwhelmed. The next day you're exhausted. That's all natural. Definitely a lot of helpless feelings right now. What can we and what can we not control? All right, let's move on to our next slide. All right, so life in the time of COVID-19, aka 2020, the year 2020. So, you know, I'd like to just kind of see how you guys would describe life in the time of COVID. If anyone wants to just add a couple of words to the chat box, whoops, to the chat box, talking about how you would describe living in the life of COVID, living in the time of COVID. Ah, yes, insecure about school starting, absolutely. Maybe a couple words to kind of describe how life is in the time of COVID. Yes, lonely, absolutely, 100%. Last week we touched on how they wanted to change. I'm sorry, nope, that was a different presentation I did. But they switched from, you know, at one point they started referring to as physically distancing instead of social distancing, because we wanted to encourage people to still maintain as much social interaction as possible, but from a physical distance, as opposed to social distancing, where we're not wanting to totally social distance. We need to physically distance. Unpredictable, absolutely. Absolutely. So what we're going to see here, one thing I want to make sure that I express and kind of let you guys have a moment, not reflect, but we'll go through it quickly, but we're in a crisis event right now, and it's a constant crisis event. And yes, we're going to talk more about supporting your child through crisis to reduce trauma, September 9th for elementary parents, and September 16th for secondary parents. We will talk a lot more about supporting our children through crisis to reduce trauma. But one thing I do want to make sure that we convey today is that we are actually in a constant crisis state right now, crisis event. If you look at this wonderful diagram, you'll look here, you talk about pre-disaster, then you talk about the impact phase. That's when it's happening, right? And then afterwards, you can have the heroic piece. Like if you think back to 9/11, right? It happened. And then there's all this heroism that came out of it. It was, you know, a lot of coming together, a lot of patriotism, etc. Then you have a honeymoon, then boom, we go down to disillusionment. And then after a while, you get back up to reconstruction. Well, I bring it up right now because we're still down here in the impact phase. Yeah, we're feeling, you know, there was some, you know, coming together. We're all in this together, and we still are all in this together. But then there's the disillusionment. Yeah, I think a lot of us have seen a lot of that in the media and on Facebook and social media. But in the reality is we're still in this impact phase. And so we're still in the middle of the crisis. This is an ongoing crisis event, because a lot of times when a crisis happens, it happens and then it's over and you're recovering, right? We're still in it. So we still have all those emotions. There's still uncertainty. There's still constant change, right? 1 minute we are, you know, sheltering in place. The next minute we're starting to pull up restrictions. The next minute we're putting the restrictions back. Then we're talking about blended learning and distance learning, and then we're saying no, we're not doing either right now because it's not safe for students to be on our campuses, right? So it's constant change. And then traumatic. I mean, I think we're feeling it, right? I feel sometimes some of the things I'm watching on the news, it's like, that's pretty traumatic to watch that. Or you hear about how maybe a family has lost multiple family members to COVID. That can be traumatic. We often are being exposed to constant suffering. Gosh, I feel like such a downer right now. Don't worry, there's hope. We're getting to the hope at the end. It seems like there's constant suffering, you know, and then there's grieving. And when we talk about grieving, there's not just grieving the loss of, you know, people. There's grieving the loss of traditions. There's grieving the loss of, you know, maybe your family member does wind up being okay, but you're not able to be there in the hospital with them, right? There's grieving graduations. There's grieving, you know, your fifth grader going to sixth grader not being able to go on campus and have a tour ahead of time. And some people are grieving, you know, the possibility of no football. I said it. I know some of the college football leagues are coming out saying that. So, I mean, and that goes back to someone had the guilt. I think someone mentioned guilty. It's like we have to remember that things are not as they usually are. They're not what we're used to. And so it's okay to mourn and to grieve those losses. And yes, you may overall have things better in your situation than others, but it doesn't mean that you're not going to still have that grief and those feelings of, man, I just want to be able to go out to a restaurant with my buddies and have a night out, right? That's okay. You're still going to grieve that, and that's okay, and it's normal, and it's nothing to feel guilty about. So let's talk briefly about Oh, I'm sorry. One other thing I wanted to mention too is that when we're in the thick of a crisis event, we're not always able to completely process our grief. And that may be also part of where we have these wide range of emotions, is that we start to grieve, but then we're not able to fully grieve it because we're still in the middle of it and things keep coming at us. So when we want to talk about common reactions to crisis, so common reactions to abnormal circumstances. And so when we're in this constant state of change, when we're in the middle of a pandemic, when everything is kind of topsy-turvy, there are going to be common reactions. We want you to realize that that is common to feel that. So we don't want you to feel bad about it. And we want you to recognize that, hey, that's normal. So anxiety, I think a lot of us, we said anxious, that was a very common feeling in our check-in. Crying, it's okay. Some people, you're going to have a day or you're going to have some moments where you're just like, this is too much. I can't handle it right now. And that's okay. It's normal to have those periods where you might be crying, you know. Fatigue, you know, I'm going to say, I feel a lot of the fatigue comes from stress, and some of it's the overwhelming emotions. And, you know, I'm talking about overwhelming emotions, but you may actually feel numbness. And that is a common reaction as well. Depression, not knowing what's going on, things being so out of control. Sleep disturbances. You know, I don't know how many of you have sleep disturbances, but I know that's a very common one. Change in weight and appetite, absolutely. I tend to be one that eats more with the stress and uncertainty, unfortunately. Good thing you can only see my face for this presentation. But unfortunately, some people go in the other direction, you know, and that's not good either, right? Anger. It's okay to feel anger. It's normal to feel angry about what's going on. Why now? Why here? Why did this person get sick? Why are we not having graduation? You know, it's normal. Okay. A lot of it is what we do with these reactions and these feelings that, you know, kind of really affect our overall. So we're going to pop into some, I like to call it basic overall. Anyone who's been in a psychology course has probably heard about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So that's why I like to call it kind of like basic psychology stuff. And so Maslow said, he came up with a hierarchy of needs, and basically he categorized them and said that the needs on the bottom need to be met before you can work on and before you can attend to and meet the needs higher. And when you look at it, it kind of makes sense, right? What is the most basic need? Our physiological needs, our needs to eat, our needs to eat and drink and, you know, use the restroom and sleep. Those are our basic needs. Once we go above that, the next need is safety. Okay, that's feeling safe in our homes, feeling safe in our communities, feeling safe from illness. Next, we get up to love and belonging, and then that's going to be friendship, family, relationships. Then we get up to self-esteem and confidence, and then we get up to self-actualization, which is our main goal. So when we look at this, I think, and what I love about this, the picture on the right is, and I got to move, there we go. What I love about the picture on the right is that it shows the same hierarchy of needs, but what they look like during COVID-19 and during this pandemic. Health and wellness, that is our most basic need, and safety and security. And if we think for a second how much we're unsure about that right now, right? Some people have lost jobs, so their security, they're feeling the impact on their security. Some people, you know, when you leave the house, you know, you may not feel safe. You're worried about your health, the health of loved ones. And so one of the hardest types of changes to understand and adjust to are those that are unexpected. And because things keep changing, I think what's been hard, especially with COVID, is just as you might feel like you're getting a little better, okay, my health is good, I'm starting to feel safe and secure, and then all of a sudden something changes and we get more news and you feel knocked back down. That's why I like the mountain there, right? You're climbing up, you're getting up to that inspiration transformation. But with COVID-19 and all the information out there and how things are constantly changing, you might feel like you're getting knocked back down a few times. But as you can see in COVID-19, part of why it is so stressful and has such a social emotional impact on it is it's really messing with our health and wellness needs and our safety and security needs. So really quickly, I said we're going to leave with hope. We're going to leave with strategy. So I'm sorry if that seemed a little bit downer-ish. I wanted to give you guys the explanation before we get into what we can do about it, okay? So I'm sure you have probably heard about coping skills. And what I really, really like about this graphic here is it breaks them down into different categories. For those of you that joined us last week, some of these are going to sound like our self-care tips, right? And self-care is a coping skill. So self-soothing, comforting yourself through your five senses. Okay, that is part of mindfulness. So self-soothing can also be mindfulness. We have distraction. Okay, some of us, we just need to be distracted. I know sometimes just watching some good old rerun Flintstones is a great distraction. You know, I know what to expect. I know Fred and Barney are going to get in an argument, but at the end of the time, they're going to be best buddies again. And I need that constant, I know what's going to happen, right? It's all going to work out. Opposite action, so doing something the opposite of your impulse. So if you're feeling really sad, watching something funny or cheerful, right? Then we have emotional awareness. You know, we're talking about our check-ins with our feelings, really looking at what our feelings are. Sometimes, you know, there's a saying out there, name it to tame it, right? And if you know what that feeling is, then you can really work on taming it. And then there's mindfulness, and then there's a crisis plan. And we have to, I don't want to forget the crisis plan in this because things can be very overwhelming. And if you ever get to the point, or someone you care about or someone you love gets to the point where it's just too overwhelming for them, it's good to have a crisis plan just in case. That's going to be talking to family and friends, having a therapist, maybe seeing a psychiatrist or crisis team, ER, etc. And I'm going to show you this video right here is going to talk a little bit more about how we can stay a little bit more sane when everything's uncertain and give us a few more strategies.
It's been a weird month for all of us, and unfortunately there's one thing that we all have in common right now, which is growing uncertainty. So here are a few tips from psychology to help us all cope. I'm Vanessa, you're watching Braincraft, and I am self-isolating in a one-bedroom apartment for an indefinite period of time. Uncertainty has been defined as a lack of information about a situation, and it's totally normal to feel uncomfortable about it. In studies, people have actually paid to reduce their level of uncertainty, but unfortunately we don't have that option in real life. First, it's important to know that we all respond to uncertainty differently. This is called your tolerance of uncertainty. And when you think about it, we all have different tolerance to caffeine in coffee or alcohol in wine, so uncertainty is no different. And this level of tolerance can affect you in different ways. So people with a lower tolerance to uncertainty are more vulnerable to experiencing anxiety. We can see this in a study that was done during the 2009 swine flu pandemic. Researchers found that people who had a harder time accepting the uncertainty of the situation were more likely to experience elevated anxiety. But even though it feels like the world is falling apart, it is good to remember that our actions have the potential to change our thoughts and feelings. And there are ways that we can build our tolerance to uncertainty. Experts recommend thinking of tolerance of uncertainty as a muscle. The more we exercise it, the stronger it gets. And the way we can exercise it is by introducing small amounts of uncertainty into our everyday lives. I made a list of examples for you, which in reality is quite visually unappealing, but bear with me. So try going on a walk outside without checking the weather, without knowing anything about what it's going to be like once you're out there. Another thing you can try is emailing or messaging a colleague or a family member and then putting your phone away. Put it in a drawer, turn it off, don't look at it for 1 hour, 2 hours. Know that there is probably a message there for you and you're okay not knowing what it says. You could also order food from a new place without looking at the menu, without looking it up online, and just not knowing what to expect. Another thing you can do that is honestly important is reducing the time that you're exposed to COVID-19 media. Obviously, news is essential, but studies of past global tragedies have found that unnecessary exposure to news about that tragedy can increase anxiety and your body's stress response. So get notifications, set yourself a time to check in, or give yourself a certain amount of time to read media every day. Don't overdose on content. Of course, some of this could lead to you annoying a colleague or reading too few news articles or getting a bad pizza. But that's the whole point of you becoming comfortable in this process of experiencing uncertainty and knowing that in the end, everything's going to be okay. Another way to cope is by doing small things that you can control, and you can do this at the same time as you're building up your tolerance of uncertainty muscle. So I've been making a list every morning of super easy things that I can do every day given circumstances. So getting up, having a shower, walking the dog, and having lunch are all on there. And then when I tick them off, it helps me feel grounded and feel like I'm actually doing something. Even if you have reached this place in the video and you're doing brilliantly and none of these tips are needed, please remember that everybody experiences anxiety differently. If people are coming to you, don't tell them they're overreacting because they might just be seeking reassurance. We are all dealing with a lot right now, and I'm going to be in this room for an indefinite period of time, but still I'm trying to build my uncertainty muscle. I'm making lists, and I'm just trying to stay safe. And I hope this video can help you do the same. Please stay safe, and more than anything, stay home. Please stay home. As always, a big thank you to my patrons. If you have ever thought of supporting this channel, now is a great time because I'm doing more live streams, and that's it. I'm just doing a couple more live streams. So I will link it to the Patreon here somewhere. I'm just doing the best I can.
So she had a lot of great strategies. And one thing that I want to just, as you can see, it's in all caps, right? Give yourself a break. It's okay. Give yourself a break. Unplug from the news, like she said. Go outside. Have some unstructured time. It's a time of change, okay? You may feel a little out of control, as I think we all feel. And you may feel like you're not living up to the expectations that you set for yourself. But know and remember that you're allowed to do less than is humanly possible sometimes. You're allowed to do and function at less than 100% sometimes. Give yourself a break, okay? And we need to acknowledge the change, right? Sometimes we get so caught up in fighting it and like, oh my gosh, this stinks. We can't do this. We can't do that. And we get so caught up in fighting the change that we don't allow ourselves to really process it and just say, okay, this is what it is. What can we do within this new situation? Focus on things we can control for ourselves. We're going to get more into this about focusing on what we can control because there is a lot out of our control right now. And so it's important during times like this to really focus on what we can control. And you want to control things like your routine, structure, your thoughts as much as you can. Stick to your routine. The more change that's happening, the more routine becomes important. This is also really important with your students, with your children, because when we're looking at, what are we doing, what's going to help our students get ready. I mean, it's about that consistency and that routine, right? If they get up at the same time every day, even though they're not leaving the house, that's great. If they are eating breakfast at the same time, if they're taking their lunch at the same time, it's that routine and that structure. Having some things that stay the same regardless of everything that's changing gives you an anchor. It could be walking the dog at 8 a.m. every day or 8 p.m. every day, right? It could be write down your routine and check it off as you go. So you're like, okay, I controlled that. I did that. I controlled that. I did that. And with your children, it's good to give them choice during this time too, so they can feel some control as well. Make sure you are eating healthy, exercising, getting adequate sleep. As if you remember from last week, sleep is one of the best things you can do for self-care and overall health. Seek support if you need it. It's okay. We all need help sometimes. And then mindset. What is your mindset? Mindset's write down the positives that come from change. I know it's hard sometimes to think about the positives, but I know when we did a parent support group end of May, beginning of June, I know some parents were really talking about how it's been more time with their family, and that is a positive, right? So maybe the changes helped you prioritize what's most important in your life. Maybe become more assertive. Change presents us with an opportunity to grow. As difficult as change is, it presents us with an opportunity to grow. And it's And we want to acknowledge how things have in some ways become better as a result of this, as difficult as it is, as challenging as it is. So now that we're talking about control, I like to call him the control fox. Some of you may have seen this on Facebook pages or wherever it is, but I love this because it really looks at what I can control and what I cannot control. So I can control my attitude. I can control turning off the news. I can control limiting my social media. And hey, not just how much social media you're on, but even who is in your news feed, right? Sometimes, there's people that, maybe you change them on your news feed, right? How you follow CDC recommendations, you have a lot of control over that. Your own social distancing, right? Your kindness and your grace and finding fun things to do at home, okay? So what can we not control? The amount of toilet paper at the store, though it seems to be a lot better now. Seems to be a lot better. There was some at Costco yesterday, and paper towels. How long this will last, unfortunately. Although it's interesting because how we control our own following of CDC recommendations and social distancing can impact how long it will last, right? But in general, we don't have the complete control over it. We can't control how others react. We can't predict what will happen. We can't control the actions of others. We can't control others following social distancing, and we can't control people's motives. And when you focus on what you can't control, it takes focus and energy away from getting through what you can control. So we have Nancy, it's you.
Alrighty, so we have a short activity for you guys to kind of take your mind off of things and hopefully give you something to think about. So we want you to take a few minutes and think about this. So we were talking about control, and Nettie was saying it can give us, right now when things are changing and a lot of things are out of our control, as was discussed in the video and as Nettie mentioned, if we can figure out what we can control and what we would like to control in our lives, that can give us a little bit of stability and security, right? So I wanted you guys to spend some time thinking in the circle of control, as you can see on your screen, in multicolors. Just think to yourself. You can share if you'd like, but just take a few minutes to yourself to kind of think about what in your life can you control that can help you maybe get a grasp on a little bit of security in our life. So what are some things as we're getting ready to start school, for you, for your family, for your kids, for your relationships, what are some things that you do have control over, right? So as she was talking about the control fox that was over there, she mentioned some ideas, but we wanted to give you a couple of minutes, maybe, Nettie, how long? Maybe 5 or 10 minutes? To discuss or to think about it on your own. Can everybody see the screen? We'll go ahead and give you about 5 minutes to kind of look at that and think about it on your own. If you have a piece of scratch paper, if you're on your iPhone, you can maybe jot down some thoughts about what are some things that you can control. Okay? Okay, now that we've given you a few minutes to kind of look over and to spend some time thinking about this, I don't know if anybody wants to share some of those things in their life that they thought of. Does anybody want to share anything? You're welcome to unmute yourself if you'd like to share with the group. Or you're welcome also as well to type it into the chat box if you would like, if you'd prefer.
My exercising, I can
Gotcha.
control that.
Definitely. Yes, I know that's definitely something that some of our staff members were talking about, that it's a good thing that they can control. They were thinking of like walking around the block. That's definitely something you can build into your schedule. So that's a good thing. Somebody echoes your thoughts. Same thing. Yeah, definitely sleeping more. I know Nettie mentioned that that's a really big way of caring for yourself and self-care that's not too overwhelming, but something that we tend to forget, but we shouldn't, right? That can make a big difference in how we're feeling and how we're functioning. Somebody mentioned, yes, attitudes and expectations. I know somebody told me once, and it definitely resonated with me, is you can't control what comes at you in life, but you can control how you react to it, right? So you definitely always have control of how you react to things. It may not seem like it a lot of times because of emotions that get in the way, but definitely that resonated a lot with me as well. So definitely our own attitudes and expectations and how we, what we're expecting of ourselves, of our kids, of our families, we can control that as well. Maybe not entirely, but we can try and shape those things for ourselves and our family, right? Anyone else? Alrighty, so we'll go ahead and move on to the next slide if we can, Nettie. Alrighty, so as we were thinking about this, we wanted to also touch on how can you help your children with this, right? So what are things we can control for ourselves as we were thinking about on the previous slide? We also can think about like what we were talking about, self-control and also self-care, right? So self-care is some of those things. But how can we start talking to our kids about their own, what they can control for themselves, right? So it's a difficult conversation for some kids, and it's also a much different conversation for a 5-year-old than it would be for a 15-year-old. So you may start the discussion with pictures, much simpler things with little kids. But we like this graphic because it provided kind of like the fox graphic that we saw earlier about control, about what things can they control in their life. So they can control their relationship with other friends, their goals, their behaviors. They can also control taking care of themselves, little things they can do, right, to take care of themselves, how they work with their families, whether they can help with things. But things they can't control are whether they're sick, the weather, right? So simple things, you could talk to them about those things. But the key things we wanted to point out was that for kids, it's important that regardless of how they're feeling, always we want to try and acknowledge their feelings. Like Lenny mentioned previous in a couple of other slides, even with friends, right, or family. If some people are much more anxiety prone or they're dealing with it differently, we all deal with things differently depending upon our circumstances. So it's always important just to acknowledge them and not to just assume that they're overreacting or underreacting regardless, because we're all different and we deal with things differently. So for kids especially, same thing, you know, their feelings, they may be dealing with it really well, and it's okay. We don't have to drag things out of them, but if they're not, it's good to acknowledge how they're feeling. Another key thing is to reassure them, right? Just be able to reassure the kids as to what's going on. And as we're going back to touching on control and what they can control, that can help their attitude. So I don't know if some of you may have heard of locus of control. It's good for all of us as a skill, sometimes to kind of think about, how do we think about what happens in the world? Locus of control is a theory about how we see things, right? So it's, do we see things, do we have an internal locus of control, indicating that when something happens, we think we have an effect on what happens in the world? Or do we see everything that's happening as something that happens to us that we can't possibly have anything to do with, right? So it's a good skill to kind of acknowledge that there are things, although we can't control everything, we do have some sense of control as to how we deal with these things, right? So we can react, like so somebody said, we always have control of our attitude, our expectations prior to, and how we react to what's happening to us, so that we don't always feel like we're helpless, right? So this locus of control, starting to feel that we do have control over some things, can really help us as we're moving forward dealing with anything in life, right? So if you feel that you can have an effect on what's happening to you, it can help you not feel as helpless anymore. So sometimes when we feel helpless, it's because we feel like no matter what we do, nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to be affected. It doesn't matter whether we're doing this or we're doing this or whatever we do. So of course, we may end up feeling a lot more helpless, right? So it can help us to start thinking about those things we can control and start realizing that, yeah, there are some things in my realm that I can actually do to help the situation, right? It's not totally out of my hands. It's not like my hands are tied, I'm blindfolded, and I cannot move, right? So there's always at least a few things in our life that we can hang on to help us feel like we have a little bit of that locus of control, so that we don't feel like everything's out of our hands, right? So we can go on to the next slide as well. And so I think we were going to try and unmute you guys, or you're welcome to unmute yourselves as well. So we wanted you guys to take a moment and maybe have a discussion with each other, either through the chat box or verbally, on what are some things that you, have you done something similar with your child? And how would you do this with your child? How would you discuss control with your children? What are some things that you might be able to do? And do you think this might prove challenging with your kids? Feel free to either unmute yourself, or you can go ahead and type in the chat box. So I unmuted most of you. If anybody wants to mention anything, I'll give you guys another minute. All right. I guess we can go on to the next slide, Nettie. Shall we move on? Somebody mentioned that they introduced meditation to their 6th grader. Yes. How did that go? Oh, nice. Very responsive. Yeah, 6th grade could be a good age for it. Actually, there was a district nearby in the South Bay that introduced not necessarily meditation, but some breathing exercises and being more self-aware of their breathing and those type of things, kind of like meditation, to like 3rd and 4th graders, and they responded pretty well as well as your 6th grader. So it definitely can be an activity that can be introduced to very young students as well. So somebody's mentioning that we are all dealing with this differently, right? So there's a spectrum of ways, and so they are dealing with other kids who maybe are not following all the guidelines, maybe not social distancing, and so they're getting more afraid of germs and getting COVID, and so working on focusing what they can do to feel safe and in control. Yeah, definitely that there are germs out there, right? Regardless of COVID, right? I heard on the news, and one of the news segments that they were doing on COVID, how there was a doctor that said the one good thing that could come out of this is that all of us maybe will focus more on hygiene, because regardless of COVID, there's always the flu. Every single year, there's the big cold season. There's lots of things out there that are there during the school year, right? And so having that focus on hygiene and washing our hands can be helpful for many years to come, regardless of COVID. So that's something we definitely can control, and hopefully that's a good thing that comes out of this, right? So our kids may be more resilient and stronger and more healthy because they're going to have this in their brain as something that happened early on in their lives. So it may develop that as a very strong skill for them moving forward. They'll be more aware of hygiene and all of those things that maybe in generations past we didn't think so much about, right? So that can be a good thing. So that if they start learning what they can control, because of course, especially as school starts, if we return to blended learning, there are going to be kids that deal with it differently, right? That will be able to wear the mask much more readily and have learned and done it at home and are social distancing and are washing their hands more often and so forth. And so maybe them learning how to deal with that so that they can protect themselves will be good as well. So somebody else mentioned that they share examples of how they deal with issues and start a conversation or writing in a journal on what they're thankful for. So definitely your kids always look to you for examples, right? So a lot of times kids don't even say it, but they watch your example. So if they watch that you can take care of yourself, like exercising, sleeping, keeping those habits, they always say, right? Even though we tell them things, but they watch more what we do. Than anything else. And kids look to you for examples, regardless, even teenagers, even though they say they don't want your opinions, they always, on many surveys and research, it indicates that kids still value their parents' opinions above others, even though they might not say it as they get older. Definitely their parents' and families' example is a huge influence in their lives, and they constantly say that. So it's definitely important to share those with them. And yeah, as the video showed, I think for those of you who may have joined us last time, the thing that can help kids share more with us is when we share similar experiences. They can help identify with you. You can share how you dealt with things when you were their age, and they can feel that as well. Definitely can help open conversations. So those are great examples. Nettie, do we want to go on to the next slide?
All right, here are some self-care reminders and actually my new favorite slide. Give yourself a break. Give yourself a break. Take a break, whether it's in the tub with the rubber ducky, whether it's playing or listening to music, whether it's creative writing. I loved the example of a gratitude journal, walking, yoga, unstructured time where you're just not doing anything. You're just letting yourself relax and feel and, I don't know, Netflix and chill. Then we have massage. A little bit more difficult right now. A lot of massage places are closed unless, but you know, you can. They have a lot of those great little massage devices, like the little guys. You often see them a lot at Christmas time, right? The little guys, you'll press the button and it gives you a massage. Like things like that are great. Talk therapy. Sometimes talk therapy is not to a therapist. Sometimes that's just a good Zoom session with your friend, right? Putting yourself first. You know, it's last week we talked about how you can't pour from an empty cup, right? You gotta fill your cup so you can give to others and be there for your children and be the parent that you want to be. And ask for what you need. It's okay to ask for help. Whether you're asking your significant other, whether you're asking family members, whether you're asking your children, whether you're asking school members, district staff, ask for what you need. And then we will have the link from last week. We need to edit it because we recorded from the beginning. And so we need to edit out the first few minutes where we're not actually talking about anything, but waiting. So we will have that sent out pretty soon, or will be available pretty soon, the self-care video from last week. And then this video will also be available. Oh. And then so we go back to types of self-care. Again, if you were with us last week, you'll recognize this, but we just kind of wanted to do another reminder. So, you know, one of the big ones, and again, we did say that it is normal sometimes reaction to have our sleep patterns different right now, but as much as we can, focus on getting that quality sleep. It is one of the best things you can do for your mental health and your overall physical health. Cultivate daily, weekly, monthly activities to manage stress. Again, next week we'll be talking more about taming stress and anxiety. So we will have more information about stress and anxiety next week. Take time to process your feelings. Sometimes just sitting with what you're feeling and naming what you're feeling can be like, wow, that's what I'm feeling, right? I'm not really mad. I'm not really angry. I'm sad. Or I'm sad that we didn't get this opportunity to get together as a family for somebody's 80th birthday party, things like that. So also nutrition and connection to others and to the natural world. So, if you can't physically be together because we're practicing social distancing, we can do Zoom happy hours. You can, do drive-bys. I've seen people sitting outside and like literally have their chairs 6 feet apart, right? With the school year approaching, try focusing on time management, boundaries, setting up a positive workplace, positive workstation for your students. Attend PDs to learn so you feel more comfortable, and take breaks. And one thing I want to just bring up about coping skills and self-care, because self-care is a coping skill. And a lot of the things that are considered self-care can also be considered coping skills. But just know it's about finding out what works for you, right? Not everyone likes yoga. It's not for everybody. Not everyone likes meditation, right? But some people love to write, so journaling is going to work for them, right? And it's about figuring out what works for you. We don't have enough time tonight to talk about it, but there are things you can do, like create your own coping box, right? Or your coping tools. Like you create your own box with the things that work for you when things get to be difficult and challenging. And you can do it like a self-care box. Same thing, same idea. What is it? Maybe you like to color, so you have, so you have mandalas in there to color, and that's what helps relax you. Maybe it's a silly comic book that makes you laugh. Whatever it is, whatever it works. But remember, sometimes you just have to find out what works for you, and it's the same thing with your kids, right? What works for one of your children may not work for the other, right? You may have one child that is like, meditation, yoga, this is my thing. And another one who's like, nah, I need to get out and run. I just need to run. That's what I need to do. Another one that's like, I just need to cuddle with my golden retriever. And another one that's like, ugh, dogs. So just got to find out what works for you. Nancy, you're muted.
We just wanted to share this clip art with you because we wanted to make sure that you took the time that during this pandemic, that we mentioned it earlier, right? That you want to give yourself a break. It's okay, and we want you to not shame yourself and try not to feel guilty, and remind yourself that it's okay to feel sad, to feel needy, or to feel like you need a snack, or not to shame yourself for watching too much TV, or maybe not exercising as much as you would like, even though it is good for us and that is something we can control. We want to be aspirational and do what we can, but we also want to ensure that you're not wanting perfection, right? So we want you to ensure that you're not beating yourself up or feeling shame about not living up to maybe the example of what we're seeing from either friends, family, or what we see on TV or Instagram or anything else. Just as we don't want our students to do that and compare themselves to others, right? We wanted, I think we can go on to the next slide. We also wanted to share with you some of the resources that are out there if you need help. If anybody else in your family or in the community that are neighbors or are friends of your kids or them, you can reach out to some of these resources. So the one thing we wanted to point out that we did not talk about last time is that there is a parent page for the district. It's TUSD.org/parents. And if you scroll down, Nettie, I can show them.
Not letting me scroll.
Oh, whoops. Can you press Control minus maybe to make it smaller so that they could see the beginning or the bottom, I mean?
Oh, there we go.
A little bit more.
Minus.
Couple more times. Hopefully they can see the bottom. Well, maybe
now it's moving for us.
All right.
Sorry about that.
So if you scroll down on this page, there's a lot of the district, well, everything that district communicates to parents should be on this page. So I don't know if you can go back now.
There we go.
There you go. So there are little drop-down menus down there for distance learning troubleshooting. So once we get started, sometimes technology is wonderful, but sometimes technology is challenging. So if you have issues with tech, you can look here. They have a tech line that parents can look at. They have all the websites that students may need to access. There's also, as I mentioned, the district communication tab. That's the first one. So if you missed that email that went through, or I know one parent called us and said, I just got that email, but now I can't find it. So everything that goes out is on the first tab for parents. There's also some great social emotional resources that Nettie and her counseling team district-wide have developed for students and for parents. So you're welcome to look at that. There's also parent information sessions, so other PDs or trainings, there's one there. And Nettie just pulled up the resources for social and emotional health.
So
so once you click on it.
I'm so sorry. I just wanted to point out why Grammarly's popping up on my screen. I don't know. Sorry, guys. And I really don't know what those yellow lines are from, but we'll figure that out. Okay, so I want to make sure I show you guys these. These have, we've got a lot of stuff about talking to your child about COVID-19. We've got parenting during COVID-19 resources. We have second step lessons. Last week we briefly talked about social emotional learning. This has the keys for you to be able to do the free parent stuff there. Mind Yeti, I believe we did Mind Yeti last week. You can click on there and do your own Mind Yeti sessions. Nancy's going to talk about South Bay Families Connected. What I really wanted to get down to make sure is we talked about a crisis plan, right? And so I want to make sure you guys know that we have crisis resources available should any of your family members or yourself or your children need anything. If during this time, if you're secondary, because this is accessible for our 6th through 12th, if they are having a friend texting them and they sound really down and they're worried about them hurting themselves or hurting someone else, they can still do the anonymous reporting system. That's still up and running. We have the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which, by the way, they always say it's not for you to call when you are feeling suicidal. Of course, you can call when you're feeling suicidal, but they are there to field calls even when you're just feeling very overwhelmed as well. Crisis text line for people that don't like to necessarily talk on the phone. They can text at the crisis text line. And we have the Care Solace information that Nancy's going to share in a minute.
Okay, and so I think we touched on these last time, but for today we wanted to share with you Care Solace is if you want to access mental health or substance abuse resources, but a great resource that's a lot more broad is the South Bay Families Connected welcome page for Torrance Unified School District. And I believe it's loading here.
It's up.
When you get it, this is the front screen that you will see. You'll be able to see some TUSD information. And then if you scroll down, Nettie, I don't know if you can scroll a little bit, you can see on the right side that they have quite a few topics. There are suicide prevention, substance abuse, depression and mental health challenges, stress and anxiety, social media and tech, bullying, college admission stress, body image, relationships, traumatic events, sexual consent and awareness, grief, divorce. There's quite a few things on there, so feel free to check it out. There's a teen blog, a parent blog, there are events that they're having. Most are virtual nowadays, but in normal times, and we hope they will return. They are in person sometimes as well. So we just wanted to leave you with those resources for now. We will touch on other resources moving forward, but we wanted to make sure you were aware of this great online resource that's open 24/7 for anybody to access video content and also just articles and other resources that you can access. So they're wellness related if you'd like to check them out. And we will take any questions at this point if anybody has questions. And if not, we will let you go. The website, yes, so somebody mentioned if this resource is on the TUSD website. Yes, if you go to TUSD and you click on, hover over the word parents, and then you click on parent engagement, that's the parent page. Yes. So if you just hover over the word parents on the main TUSD website, click on parent engagement, and there's a link for Care Solace, for South Bay Families Connected. For South Bay Families Connected, Nettie, can you go back and click on it so I can share the splash page with them?
All right. This one, South Bay Families, or
click on it, yeah.
Did I?
And I'll put the link in the chat for everybody.
Nadine.
oh, for South Bay Families Connected. Sorry.
There you go. South Bay Families. Oops. .org/TUSD. There you go. So that's the link if you guys like, if you would like to check it out. So thank you so much for coming, and we appreciate it, and we hope to see you next week at our next Wellness Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm going to call both of you.
Okay.
Yes. No
Thank
worries.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was great.
Thank you very much.
Were you here last week for self-care?
No, but I really want, is there a way to get it?
Yeah, so we are waiting for the edit out because it was about, the record went on right when we opened, so it was us saying, okay, okay, before it even started. So we're editing out the very beginning where it was not the presentation.
Okay.
So it's going to be on that TUSD website that we showed you. It'll have parent sessions there. And there'll be a link.
Okay.
And
Go
then
to
next week is taming stress and anxiety.
Okay.
And the week after that is connectedness from a distance. So how to stay socially and connected from a distance.
You're doing a great job. This is incredible.
Thank you so much. And we're so glad you're able to join us.
Yes.
All
Sounds
right.
like
Nobody else has any questions. We'll go ahead and end. Okay, Nettie?
Oh, wait, hold on. 1 second.